Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this video has to do with crushed pilot dreams. And it has to do with Air Force pilot dreams being shattered, and this is a view from both sides. I knew one side of this situation because I went through a serious drawdown back in the mid-70s when the POWs were coming back from Vietnam. The pilots were being reintroduced back into Air Force pilot training. I was down as a T-37 instructor at the time, and you just walk down the hallways and you would hear stories about people being shot down and being captured and stuff like that. And it was it was just amazing. And this is just walking down the hall, you'd come across a conversation. But as a result of the Arab oil embargo, the people coming back, and the Vietnam War being over, we had a very greatly reduced necessary pilot population. In fact, it was cut in half. Now, I know this from my side of it, but part of the whole deal is on this channel is I get a lot of feedback in the comments, which is nice, but I also get a lot of email correspondence between individuals, and I got quite a few I correspond with, and of course those can get much more involved because you don't have as much limitations, and they share some very interesting information. And this is information I got from a guy who was on the other side of the situation about getting his dreams for being an Air Force pilot crushed. Now, as I said, I went to Vance Air Force Base back in '73, and they kept me on as an instructor, known as a plowback from anybody who did that, and I instructed in the T-37. The Tweety Bird, the only aircraft designed to convert JP4 directly into noise, and also the only aircraft designed to fly butt in first. But one of the things we did is we had ROTC cadets that we would take up for rides, which is really a cool thing, and I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. It was a lot of fun. Now, one thing was unique about Vance Air Force Base, and this is from the yearbook that I was co-editor with. We had two classes, no, two sections. Our class was divided in two sections, 30 pilots each. Yeah, class of 60, fairly large class. And I did the editing for one side, and another guy did the editing for the other side. But we had a very great artist, Gordy Davis, who unfortunately was killed in a T-39 accident in Korea. He was the old man in our class. He was 28 years old. Yeah, just barely squeaked in on the age limit. But one thing, and he was a great artist. He did a lot of the artwork in the yearbook. And this was kind of taken off the Playboy motif, if you notice the style there. But we had civilian crew chiefs, mostly female, and in the summertime, because it's very hot in Enid, Oklahoma, they would wear halter tops and shorts. And it's kind of funny. This individual, we'll call him Mark. He's the one who we've been corresponding a little bit with. He wrote me a couple of emails here, and when he did his flight, it came back in. He was, as he said, he was greeted by a well-endowed girl wearing a bra and very tight white T-shirt. Now, what happened here is we had a guy complain that the halter tops were distracting, and they were, and I'm digressing here. When I was a student, I was taxiing back in the T-38, and she was there holding the wands lined up, and my instructor said, now just put the pedo boom between her tits. And I started laughing so much I almost didn't put the brakes on. But, okay, a guy complained that the halter tops were a distraction, and people weren't paying attention, they were taxiing, so they couldn't wear halter tops anymore, so the girls wore T-shirts, and they didn't always wear bras in the T-shirts, which they knew how to play this game, and we had a lot of really good looking chiefs, I'll tell you. But anyway, okay, I digress. But he says, a very well endowed girl wearing a bra and very tight white T-shirt. She immediately started climbing all over me, rubbing up against my sweaty body. It was literally 105 degrees that day. She installed the safety pins in the seat and then just walked away. That's what they did. They didn't trust the students to re-safety the seats and that, so they would come up and they'd put the pins in. Of course, the thing I really miss now when I'm flying, especially in my Great Lakes with all the shoulder harness and lap belt, I really miss the crew chiefs who helped me strap in. That was really a nice aspect, holding your helmet, help me strap in, bring your shoulder harnesses over. But these girls were quite a pleasure to work with. Okay, but back, I'm being an instructor in the T-37, and it's coming down that we're losing our class people. But okay, here's the thing: why do you fly a T-37? Okay, quick. Why you do fly a T-37? Because you can get past the damn thing in 85 hours, and you can fly the really fun jets like T-38s. And then, of course, you want to go on and do something great, like fly for the Thunderbirds. That's when I watched the Thunderbirds come to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Actually, it was Sioux City. It was the Blue Angels that came to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Ernie Christensen didn't put his gear down. I took a video about that. Landed gear up, punched out on the deck. But man, you watch that and go, I want to be a Thunderbird. Well, I never did end up being a Thunderbird, although I got to fly a Thunderbird F4, and I talk about that in another video, and also a Blue Angel F-18, because the F4s, digressing here, they bastardize them with some modifications, so they can't go back to the fleet, so they send them like Edwards, the Flight Test Center, where I got to fly it, and the F-18s went to NASA out at Dryden, now Armstrong, out at Edwards also, and that's where I got to fly that. But you want to do neat things. And I had my model of the SR-71, and I wanted to be an SR-71 pilot. That was cool. Well, this is Bob Gilliland, who we became friends with. And the nice thing is, yeah, maybe you don't get to necessarily fly the coolest aircraft ever, but you kind of get to, fortunately, associate with some of the cool pilots. But okay, back to the main thing, primary flying jet. This is when you start out, and we had a big reduction in the number of pilots. In fact, part of the problem was we were only getting academy grads. All the ROTC students were just shut down, and I'll tell you about that here in just a second. But this is what you wanted. You wanted to get the Air Force wings. Now, jumping back for a second, one thing they do is when you're in ROTC, Air Force ROTC, it's kind of cool. They arrange for flights for you to go various places and see various aspects of the Air Force, because not everybody is going to be a pilot. About half of our Air Force ROTC group were non-pilot people. And we got into this, I think it's a Convair 131. I don't remember. This is back when the Air Force actually had propellers. Yes. And there's another view of it. We had just stopped at Whiteman Air Force Base, and we were you go into base operations, and this kind of gives you kind of a flavor of the place. It's got all the bigwigs up there, all the colonels. Nobody is smiling. You go into a base ops in a fighter base, and all the colonels and the higher ups on the fixtures, they're all smiling. They're not smiling at the Minuteman site. And we actually got to go through, that's a bunch of us, the cadets back there, that actually got to go through an active Minuteman silo. And it was kind of interesting. Mark, in his writings, brings back a few interesting memories, because we actually went down the elevator into the capsule, and of course, they've got to launch the missiles. You have to each turn a key, and they're far enough apart that no human has the hand width to turn them both. And each guy has a 38 on his hip, because if one guy goes crazy, he's supposed to shoot his buddy there. So that's kind of an interesting reality. And there's also this escape hatch. And Mark made an interesting comment about it. It's a 3-foot corrugated pipe, and it's full of sand. Well, the reason you have an escape hatch is because since you're a missile site, you're also a target. And they had these antennas that they actually explosively blow up through the ground, because if you got hit and it blew all your HF communication antenna down, you just fire up another one explosively, and it's supposed to be able to go through rubble and stuff like that. But okay, you get hit, the elevator's gone, you're in this capsule below ground. How do you get out? Well, you open this hatch and all the sand falls out. And of course, what does high temperature do to sand? It makes it into glass. So that was kind of interesting, because the sand would fall out, and it was funny. Mark mentions that I guess one of the guys did a calculation that the sand that would fall through would exceed the volume in the capsule, and you'd be buried in sand. But anyway, even if you did crawl up through this thing, you're probably going to try to break the shovel through a probably several inch piece of glass, and that wouldn't be so good. But anyway, here we are back. the training load has gone down. And in fact, it went to the point where typically I would have 3 to 4 students as an instructor. And I mean, that was great. But now we're down to 1 student. And you did not want to lose your student. You did not want your student to wash out. And it happened, of course, about 25% washout rate. If you lost your student, man, you were in trouble trying to get flying time. And it was just not a good deal. So the amount of flying you got was way, way down, and you cherished every bit because you were instructing, and to maintain your own proficiency was difficult because you didn't get to fly very much. So we had a few people, and the people we've got. This was one of the patches. These are the patches that I instructed at when I was a T-37 instructor, and we got the delayed yet delighted. That was one class that got delayed quite a bit. So that was what I saw on my site. Oh, and one of the other things, our scheduler in Sea Flight, he had a brother who didn't go through the academy. He went through ROTC, and they shut off all the ROTC things. And what was especially galling to him and the rest of us was that if you were a pilot candidate at the academy and you did not want to be a pilot, you had to talk to a shrink and apparently explain why you weren't manly enough to be a pilot because it was considered a mental issue. So what they basically did was they didn't say, I don't want to be pilots. They would take a pilot slot. They would come to Vance and they would do SIE, self-induced expulsion. They would just get out. They didn't want to be pilots. And this was aggravating because his brother of the scheduler truly wanted to go through, and these guys were taking a slot and they didn't want to fly, and his brother did. So that was especially galling. But now, let me tell you about Mark's situation as he related it to me. He joined Air Force ROTC. He was scheduled to graduate and be commissioned May 76. And the story was the class of 75 was waiting from 12 to 18 months. And you see, these guys were 77. I think they were 75, 76 class that we had the patch there. And they were waiting a year to a year and a half to go to flight school. And they were being, the budgets were being cut. And they decided that, you're going to cancel. And all the ROTC classes did get canceled. So they got the RIF letters. Now I'm going to digress a little bit. RIF is reduction in force. I, at the time, back in the mid-70s, had just got my regular commission. If you come in Air Force, if you come in the academy, you're a regular commissioned officer. You're in the top group. If you come in for ROTC, you're reserve, and you're the secondary group. And the thing is, you want to go from that reserve to a regular commission. That's a good deal. And there are very few of those selected, and I had a flight commander who wrote me a very nice efficiency report, basically, and it stood out enough that I got selected for a regular commission. So that's cool. That means, man, we want you to stay. You're a good guy. So I go to personnel, and I'm ready to sign the paperwork. And she's got to have, at that time, she's trying to get rid of pilots right from the instructor ranks, because we obviously have too many. If you only have one student, you got too many pilots, okay? Instructor pilots. And she was trying to talk me in to getting out of the Air Force, and I was coming there to confirm that I was going to be, one of the guys staying. And boy, that was kind of a shock to me. But anyway, what happened to Mark's group is they were just told, you're not going to go to pilot training. So they started to have some interviews with him, and they wanted them to become missile officers. And they were getting kind of the high pressure, sales job. They talked to a captain. He couldn't convince him. They talked to a major. He couldn't convince him. Finally, they talked to a full bird colonel. And he had a class of 25 cadets, and half of them were pilot candidates. And as he recalls, none of them accepted the missile slot. They had seen that horse and pony show, and they're going, no, we don't want that. And they just bailed. So that was an unfortunate end to their career. That was the guy who never got to it. In fact, later on, they're training Air Force pilots to be drone operators. And okay, I got a couple of digressions here. And the funny thing, he says 70% of the pilots are going to be drone operators, and they want to wear flight suits. when they first started out with these drones and these very expensive drones, they did people who, played video games. The trouble with a person who plays a video game as opposed to a person who's a pilot flying is a pilot knows when things are going wrong and I need to get this air vehicle back to base or it's going to be, it's going to we're going to lose it. The guys who were with the video games were kind of they kept going till it was game over. And the airplane crashed. They were not recovering it in time to save the aircraft. They let a not good situation just go and develop, and so they were losing vehicles where a pilot would know enough to bring it back. Although I don't want to go through Air Force pilot training and then sit there controlling remotely a drone. The other thing was I'm a member of Society of Experimental Test Pilots, and it's quite a rigorous process to get to be accepted as a member. You have to have a flight test background, and they have to approve it and all this stuff. There were some people who were saying, well, they were drone test pilots and they wanted to be able, they had no flight test experience other than being a drone pilot, and they wanted to be accepted as a test pilot because they were a drone pilot, and the answers were kind of coming back. Well, no. If your butt isn't in the seat and you're risking yourself, you're not qualified to be. And it took just to be a basic member. It took 10 flight test events, but there were some interesting responses. I remember one person said he did get accepted as a member, but he said, I only had 4 test flights, and he labeled the space shuttle, the 4 space shuttle flights that he flew. So it was kind of like, yeah, that kind of trumps anything I ever did. Even though you didn't meet the 10 mission criteria, and I believe you got in. But anyway, that's a big digression there. So anyway, this was the other side, the guys who they went through and they said they're not going to be missile people. Oh, okay. One more digression here. Because I had a degree in electrical engineering, I actually had to sign a paper. I can remember, in my mind, I can remember when Captain Brown came to me with this paper and says, before you can go to pilot training, you need to sign this. And it basically said that if I washed out of pilot training, they were going to keep me as an engineer. Now, I had other guys in my class that didn't have a skill the Air Force found important. Some of them had just stuff like general studies where, you went to college for 4 years, you got it 4 years, you got a degree, and that's it. Nothing that was very useful. I had to sign a form that says, hey, if I wash out, they're keeping me as an engineer. I had guys in my class that they went to a hearing, and the hearing board says, well, the only reason you want to stay is in the Air Force is because you have so many debts you want to pay out. And they kicked him out. They had no use for him. So, it could be bad if you washed out. But if you have something they wanted, they kept you disregardlessly. If you're going to murder a word, just totally kill it, okay? But anyway, so that's the story about people that on the inside we had reduced pilots going through, and on the outside people couldn't get in. So the T-37, of course, has come to a rather inglorious end. It was a really fun airplane to fly and instruct in, but not only did it come to an end, but many people's careers came to an end. Of course, now they're talking about having a pilot shortage, of course, because they increased the commitment from, I think, 6 to 10 years. So as a young guy in college, you are really committed for a long time. And I guess that turns people off, especially the way the airlines are hiring. But, all of this is very fluid. It changes. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you found it interesting and informative and enjoyable. Thanks.